stories first, and then we'll get into the more education part of things. This is good? Okay. Never had a microphone like this before. I feel like I'm holding a trophy right now.
Yeah.
So, our personal stories. We're both in recovery from substance use, so we'll start off there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want me to go?
Yeah.
Alright, so like I said, my name's Connor, and I'm in recovery from alcohol and drugs. I've been sober since September 27th, 2015, and I grew up on Cape Cod. I still live there. My parents, I grew up in a good home, but there was some substance use, and early on my parents got divorced when I was 13, and I just never felt like I fit in. And then as I got into high school, I had great aspirations, but I found like mental health and anxiety and depression kind of took over, and I started using substances to kind of mask those feelings, and I kind of lost touch of with what was going on. And fast forward a little bit, you know, I was 21 and a half years old. I went to my first detox, and I had like unexplained spiritual awakening, and I started. It was almost as if I was blind, and then I got a pair of glasses, and I could like see the world for the first time in my life. I saw outside of my little self and my own problems and my own thoughts, and like I got a glimpse of like a world bigger than my problems. And this is a picture of me actually. I think it was in 2013 maybe. And I had been at a treatment center for about 6 months. It was probably at that time the best health and shape I had been in my life. And that was just after a yoga class, and the photographer took a picture of me. And if you had seen a picture of me like 6 months before, it would probably be unrecognizable. I was a high IV drug user. I was on the verge of homelessness. I couldn't keep a job. My family didn't want anything to do with me anymore. My friends didn't want anything to do with me anymore. And I was in this place, and I actually went to this music festival, and I won a guitar out of like thousands of people, and I met some different people, and I got outside of my comfort zone, and I experienced something different. And it was like the spark of my journey in sobriety. And then 2 years later, there I am in Egypt, doing one of the typical tourist photos, and I celebrated my 2-year anniversary from sobriety in Cairo, Egypt. And I traveled a lot when I was a kid, but like at the time when I became an adult, like I had no hopes or aspirations or dreams of doing anything. I didn't know how I was going to live in regular life. I didn't know how I was going to get on with life. And a series of events came, and I had these notes that would say like for today, for next week, for this year, and then someday. And I was packing my bags to go on this trip, and the someday part said go to Egypt, and here I was 2 years in sobriety, and that someday came to fruition. And then later on, I traveled again in Peru, and I was walking through a market, and these two young boys were throwing like these little firecracker things at me and playing in the streets. And I took a moment and shared some time with them. And for me, sobriety has completely transformed who I am and my outlook on life. I had a very small mindset. I was very depressed. I had no direction in my life, and I had no one in my life that was that inspired me to do any good. And you know, through the process of working with an AA sponsor, and then going, you know, out into the world and throwing myself out there, I was able to change the person who I am, who I was then, and to the person who I am today. And that is over the past years, what's worked and what hasn't. So there's a picture of me. I rode my bike across country from Cape Cod to LA in 2020 to raise money for alcohol and drug abuse awareness. I was at my job, I was looking out the window, and 2.5 weeks later, I was on my bike and heading in the direction. What has worked is consistency, doing the same thing over and over again. In addiction, I was doing the same thing over again, hoping for different results, and I wasn't getting them. In my recovery, I found that you know, there's certain things that I do. I pray every morning, I pray every night, and I do certain things on a regular basis that I feel maintains the quality of life that I have today. So the consistency was definitely a big thing. Another thing has been surrounding myself with like people and learning from people who have more experience than me. What hasn't worked over an 8-year period of time was just staying in one support group, not seeking outside help, not you know, trying to expand further beyond that point. I know it works for some other people, but for me, like, I was feeling an itch, like I had reached this point and I had plateaued and I was ready for more, so I started seeking and looking outside beyond what I had accessible to me within my town, and that's where my traveling journey kind of reached. What else hasn't worked was having in AA, there's a part of the book at the end. It says contempt prior to investigation, and I thought I knew things. I thought I had the answer, and no one else was going to tell me anything otherwise. So having like being small-minded and closed-minded, and not open-minded to different ideas and help from other people. You know, I even in sobriety, I was still suffering because I wasn't willing to take advice from other people. So it's a little bit about me.
Thanks. So just about my journey, really quick. You know, I think that blurry image says it all, right? That's when I was 17 years old, right before things got really bad. I started using because I was sad and lonely, and I didn't have anyone to really share that with. I come from a divorced home, which is pretty normal nowadays, but I feel like it's not recognized as a difficult thing. And I had a hard time figuring out where I was fitting in, so I found a group of other sad kids and just got into trouble. And then I felt like I belonged. So it started off, I guess, innocently. You know, you smoke a little weed, you drink once, and it just escalated so quickly. I started IV drug use at 17. Can everyone hear me? Okay, sorry. Just let me know. I started IV drug use at 17, and I was so bad, I got to the point where I was jaundiced within months because I was drinking recklessly and using drugs to the point where I wasn't sure if I was going to graduate school. And so I was out of high school, jaundiced, living out of my car, like it was just a mess. I eventually got got arrested, and I remember just being in the jail cell, like a little 100-pound kid crying, because I didn't know how I got there. You know, I didn't feel like I should be there. I felt like I was being criminalized for like just being lost, you know? So I ended up going to a halfway house. I was 19 years old at this point. I went to Western Mass for 9 months. I did really well. The structure helped me. I got connected with other people that were role models for me. I started going back to college because I had been in college when I got permanently expelled and arrested. So I had like a big ditch to dig myself out of at that point, but I was doing it. And then I was on my own and I relapsed and I threw it all away. And so I was back in the ditch, having to claw my way out. And I actually got Section 35. I think it's a different term here in Connecticut, but it's when you're involuntarily placed into treatment. So I was in treatment against my will. It's sort of like a 30-day incarceration, but with treatment. And although I hated it and I cried the whole time, it did save my life. It was traumatizing. I don't recommend it unless you really have to do it. But from that point on, I was like, I just can't do this anymore. I had hit the rock bottom so quickly. And I wasn't going to groups. I wasn't like willing to do the things. I just wanted to like get out of there. And I did, but I ended up going to an NA meeting and I started to make friends. And then I started to find a place where I belonged. And that worked for me for many years. And then a big piece of my recovery has been school. Like I stayed going to school. They kicked me out. I had to write formal letters. I had to get references to let me back in. They did. And then school gave me something to keep my recovery for. Like I had a purpose. I had to like stay on the straight and narrow because I had to finish my degree or I had to like go to the next phase of my life. And I started to work in treatment when I was going to school. I worked at a women's halfway house. I ended up working at that facility I was sectioned at as a counselor. I continued on, that's my dad right there. I continued on and I said I have to be a therapist. And then I was like, I have to be a doctor. Like I just kept going, you know. I didn't stop. It gave me this sense of purpose in the world. So school was a big piece of it. And then another piece of it was I also had a traveling, experience time in my life before we met. And I got to see the world and other cultures. I did grow up in a different culture, with my dad, but I didn't get to really experience it until I went and I saw other people live differently than us. And it gave me a form of reference that we don't have. Like I saw this, people were together, people were celebrating together, they were living together, multiple generations in one home. People would invite me in, like, come have tea, and they didn't even know me. Like, the hospitality was incredible. And so, I just felt like there's so much from other parts of the world that really should be included here. Like, there's something missing here, right? And I think that's why I use drugs. So, that is my journey. What has helped, I've taken risks, like healthy risks. I've tried new things. I've gone to different events. I've met new people. It's really been a journey of coming back to myself and nurturing that small child that was sad. hasn't helped. I think this idea, like in the program, like the self-help program, there's a phrase, once an addict, always an addict, and like this limiting belief that like this is all I'm ever gonna be, and that's not the case. Like being in recovery is not my full identity. It's just an experience that I went through almost 14 years ago, and like I can be so many more things, and I am. I have a career. I have a husband. We have friends. We have a life. It doesn't have to be just this like thing that happened to me and I have to be shameful about and like repair forever. So that's us. We just wanted to show you who we are. This is our nonprofit. We're a holistic mental health community initiative. We provide education and community programs, and we're really people helping people, recreating community. Okay? Just to delve into the education piece a little bit more, how many people are familiar with substance use? Yeah. Like on a personal level or a professional level? Somebody can answer. Both? Okay, yeah. So maybe someone has someone in their life, or you've experienced yourself, or you've seen things on TV, or you work with people. It's not something we can really escape this day and age. So, substance use disorder, the definition, according to the DSM, which is the Diagnostic Manual for Therapists, substance use impairs the ability to fulfill obligations at work, school, or home. It's persistent desire to cut down use. Continued use despite exacerbated psychological or physical problems. And I think that we can both say like we were using against our will. We did not want to. Even when it was just smoking marijuana. Like I know I work with clients that they're smoking weed even when they don't want to. And it doesn't seem as extreme as what our stories were, but it's still really difficult.
So substance types are alcohol, marijuana, stimulants including cocaine, methamphetamine, prescribed amphetamines like Adderall and Ritalin, opiates such as heroin, opium, morphine, opioids, prescribed Oxycontin, methadone, Percocet, fentanyl, Suboxone, benzodiazepine, Xanax, Ativan, Klonopin, Valium, barbiturates, phenobarbital, hallucinogens, psilocybin, ecstasy and LSD, and also tobacco and vaping.
So I really just want to pause and see, if this works. Like this right here, this right here, this right here, this right here. Those are all manufactured drugs. I just want to point that out, right? Like we kind of gloss over the fact that these are man-made drugs that are being prescribed to people every day. Right?
And are being abused or
Yeah.
misused by many people.
So the statistics, I just, did a little bit of research, and 2.1 million opioid use disorders are diagnosed annually. That's like kind of shocking. And that's just what's reported. A lot of people don't even go into treatment, they're still just battling with it on their own. And 760,000 overdoses since 1999. So, what is that? Like 24 years? It's a long time span, but that's a lot of people. We shouldn't have any of it, right? It's shocking. This figure here shows national drug-involved overdose deaths. If we can see the pandemic, right? Do we see that spike? 106,000, 2021, after the shutdown, after people were divided and separated and not able to connect with each other, right? I also want to show that there's more males than females. And what does that say about the cultural narrative? The past month, this was in 2021, which was the last study for the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Association, which is concerning. I don't know why that is our last study, but their collected data showed that, you see, we're from Massachusetts, you guys are in Connecticut, but we're still in the high percentages of people ages 12 and older using in the past month. I want to assume that that has gone up since 2021.
And this one shows the greater use of trying heroin at least once or twice among people between 18 and 25. And now, trying heroin is not something that people just do on a whim. But yeah, we're in the highest percentile, pretty much all of New England, at least Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. And the alcohol use in the past month among people from 18 to 25, we're at, again, the highest, and Connecticut, in the second highest percentile.
So a lot of your students that are on the campus, you probably go to parties, alcohol is usually available and accessible at these things. We can talk about heroin and overdoses all day, that might be unrelatable, but alcohol is still very high in these areas that we live in. It's a problem, and it can also lead to other things. So the effects of substance use, it can lead to homelessness. A big part of it is just the loss of connection to family and friends, even if it's just smoking marijuana and drinking. Legal issues and incarceration, difficulty keeping a job, health conditions, increased trauma, like the trauma of going through addiction itself is on top of what we were already battling with, right? There's a social, emotional underdevelopment, if you want to touch on that.
Yeah, so, from my personal experience, I've worked with, and also a lot of my friends and myself included, I found myself, and I've witnessed, males in particular in their mid-20s, and not just for financial reasons, but they're living with their parents, they're unable to keep a relationship or a job. They really have loss in aspiration, and some of this is in sobriety, with a couple years of sobriety, and they're still unable to progress in life, from the time when they became potentially stunted from using drugs and alcohol. And I personally myself still feel a struggle with that moving forward to this time, and it's something that's interesting.
Psychologically, we get stuck at that point where we're using, right? And it's hard. A lot of times family members want different expectations, you should be here, you should be doing this, and people just can't get there. But that's why. Lowered self-esteem and suicidality are other effects. So the treatments, there's inpatient detox. You can only go to detox for opiates and alcohol because you become physically dependent. When you withdraw from opiates and alcohol, it's horrible. It's like death. I can't explain it any other way. You do anything you can to not feel that feeling. Alcohol, benzos should be on there too. But alcohol and benzos, tapered in a medical facility, if it's not monitored by a medical professional. The withdrawal symptoms can make someone seize, and the important thing to know is that a lot of times people are prescribed Xanax or Klonopin, and they take it or they stop taking it, and it could be harmful if you just stop taking it altogether. Okay? There's outpatient, halfway house, sober living, therapy, psychiatry, recovery coach, the MATs. So MATs are medication assisted therapy. Do people know about MATs? Raise your hand if you do. Okay, some people. All right. Go ahead.
Yeah, typically it's used for opioid use. There's like methadone is usually something that's taken, pictured in the top left, something that's taken like a daily. You go there daily, and it does have an opioid in it, but it's used kind of as like a maintenance. The Suboxone and the Subutex, and as well as the naloxone, which is more used with alcohol and some opiate, is a prescribed medication. The Suboxone does have an opioid in it, and the naloxone is just like a blocker. And if you use opiates when you're on those substances, you won't really have an effect, and you can actually get kind of sick on the naloxone from if you drink on the substance.
The important thing to know is that there are people that will try to break through the methadone and the Suboxone, and they will overdose trying to do that because they can't feel the effect, but they're trying to override it through. They're trying to override the blockers, but you just can't. Yeah. So, personal history: I did go on Suboxone maintenance when I was a teenager. They put me on it, and it was even more difficult to get off of than the actual drugs.
Yeah, harm reduction is kind of a trend that's kind of emerged, like become more popular. There was different in bigger cities, especially out in California, but with like the advent of Narcan, which is a administered spray to help people overcome overdose. It administers like a blocker into the system and can bring somebody back from an overdose. And it's an evidence-based approach, equipping people with life-saving tools for substance use. And part of that also is needle exchange program. They are actually like especially in cities, inner cities, providing like clean needles to prevent other things like Hep C, AIDS, and like some other HIV.
The takeaway from this is that when people do not want to stop using, there are people that are like, no, I don't want to be in recovery. The idea is just to keep them safe in the community. So access to these resources is important. Okay, so just to jump to, we gave you the background of what happens in the field, what is substance use, but let's delve into the issues in the field. Substance use is viewed through a biomedical model, so that means it's a disease-based way of thinking. Like you have this disease, and there's a pathologized view of what people experiencing substance use go through. There's these sort of ideas when you go into AA. It's because I'm an alcoholic. It's my disease. My name is Joe and I'm an addict. What do you think that does to somebody? Anybody want to raise their hand?
What was your question?
When you say those things, it's my disease. I'm an alcoholic. I'm an addict. What do you think that does over time? Yeah.
You're like reaffirming it as an identity.
Yeah.
She said reaffirming as an identity, yes. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say the same thing about they believe in self-efficacy and explaining.
Yes, so it's sort of like what I talked about earlier, like this is all I'm ever gonna be. And what about the other parts of myself? Do I go around saying, my name is Rajat and I'm an artist? No. You know, there's no other place where I have to like identify a specific part of my identity. It's just a little bizarre. And I get the idea we don't want to forget where we came from. At the same time, is it going to prevent us from going forward in our future? So it's just something to think about. A lot of times I'll have clients that come in, they'll have mental health issues or substance use experiences. And they said, well, I can't do that because I have ADHD. You know, it's my ADHD, so it's not possible. Well, it's my depression and anxiety. As if they can't do anything about it, right? So the labeling actually psychologically makes us feel like we don't have any control over our experience. And that's something we need to be careful with. We do have some sort of agency over healing from this stuff. Does that make sense? Yeah. Anybody feel like it doesn't make sense? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So there's also a mental health division in the field. Like, so you go get substance use treatment over here, and then you go get mental health treatment over here. Sometimes they have dual diagnosis. But even in the recovery communities, it's like, this is like a peer community for mental health. This is, alcoholism. Like, there's a separateness as if we don't have these things that coexist. The idea here is that people use substances because of their mental health. Substance use is it's a solution to an existing problem. People may feel depressed. I was sad, so I wanted to use to make myself feel better. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just add one more thing. A good example of that is that it is. They say that it is the solution, and most of the time when someone does stop using or drinking, they actually may feel worse, not better. And usually it's because of all the other mental health symptoms are all still there, and they're actually not being medicated now, so they may actually be worse.
It's true. So I just want to acknowledge that we're missing the larger picture. Substance use treatment is a reactionary system. So when people are using substances, they're already in crisis. Like, they're desperate enough to self-medicate, right? What led people to using substances in the first place? Those are the questions we should be asking. So from my doctoral research, I've uncovered that there's personal or intergenerational trauma that leads up to addiction. There's other people in the field that feel the same way. Like, underneath all of this stuff, either I have been through trauma or someone in my family has been through trauma and I've inherited those characteristics either through learned behaviors or my genetics, right? So through this lens, addiction is a byproduct of trauma rather than a disease. Why is that important? Anybody want to take a guess?
Not all the time.
Huh?
Not necessarily all the time.
Okay.
There are a lot of other factors that leads to addiction. There's genetics.
Yeah.
And trauma typically is caused by pain, either emotional or physical. So it's not always true.
I agree with you. I think the reference of what trauma is just needs to be zoomed out a little bit, right? So that's why the intergenerational trauma guess is part of it. But from this, yeah.
Have you heard of this new, it's just fairly recent. They can actually genetically map whether you are sensitive to certain medications. And pretty much they have what they call the green zone. That means that if they gave you this medication, it would give you the effect that is intended to cure something. And they also have like the orange and reds. And the reds, definitely you cannot have those type of medications. It's called like I think a P450 sensitivity test. They take blood and they run through a series of lab tests and stuff. And especially people who have depression or a mental illness, it is very, very effective because historically, when you are diagnosed with a mental health disorder like depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, all those other stuff, they tend to give you certain medications they think might help based on previous results. But it's like a trial and error. So you go through several of this. After so many weeks, it doesn't work, they give you another one. But right now, I think they're making it a lot more effective, I should say, not easy, but effective to identify which medications would work best for you based on your chemistry, your genetic predisposition to certain things. So
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing that we are doing now. Because back in the old days, people get so frustrated having to try 2-3 different medications just to see if it works for them. But now they can tend to really focus, at least
So-
because of genetic mapping.
Technology is advancing, right? So they can detect things earlier. I do want to say antidepressants, this is like off topic but somewhat related. Antidepressants were supposed to be just a temporary intervention. It's supposed to just reactivate the chemicals in our brain so that our brain can produce it naturally in ourselves. But people are just put on antidepressants thinking it's supposed to be for the rest of their lives. So I think that's a whole other conversation, those medications are temporarily fixing the symptoms. So if you think about substances, they're fixing the symptoms. The medications are fixing the symptoms. But the root cause, which is usually trauma, family trauma, or the environment needs to change, right? Something in their environment needs to change. Those don't get addressed because people feel better on the medication, but then eventually they have to address those things, so they do end up getting depressed again. I literally have those people in my office all the time. It's sort of like this. I hate this. I don't want to say it. It can benefit in some instances sometimes, but it's not a permanent solution.
The reason I brought that up is because mental illness. A lot of I'm a nurse. I literally handle a lot of detox patients, and they basically start out with a lot of them anyway, not all of them. They have depression problems where the mode of treatments didn't help, so they resort to something that just numb them, and then it leads to like alcohol or substance use just to deaden that pain, that emotional,
It's tough, yeah, and you see it on the front lines, right? Like, that's really tough work. And when someone's in that much emotional pain, we want to fix it right away. We want people to feel better right away. And we're in a society where it's like, get rid of the pain right now. Get rid of the depression right now. As if it's not somewhat useful sometimes. And I know that's really hard to think in that perspective, but our body is usually telling us, hey, something's not right here. I need to change something in my life. And that's why we get those symptoms. So, the real takeaway from this, we could be focusing on preventing addiction from ever occurring. I know it's hard to think about, but it's true. Why do people keep using? Trauma is stored in muscle memory. Talk therapy alone does not work. I have clients that come in and the muscle memory is stored in our body. Our body is remembering. So on a subconscious level, it keeps overriding their good decision making. And that's why they keep repeating the patterns. It happened to us. We would relapse, I didn't know him at the time, but we both gone through relapse, and it was this impulse to make the wrong choice without any control over it. That was because the subconscious and the muscle memory in my body was not addressed. It can't be addressed just through talk therapy, because the part of our brain that needs to be addressed is subconscious, and talking is a conscious act in our prefrontal cortex. So, do you want to talk about relapse?
No, and I just want to emphasize again, like what I mentioned before, like the trauma is stored in the body, so it's like people are using because of the trauma, but then when, even on the other side, like years into abstinence from using, like without any, like the processing and the releasing and the work to like go through those emotions and feelings, they're still going to stay there. Just because I'm not using a substance to mask them doesn't mean they still don't exist. It doesn't mean they don't impair me in some way. So.
Yes. All right, so zooming out from the larger picture, what does this all mean? What are we trying to get at? There really needs to be systemic changes that occur. We can't be focusing on just trying to change the addict, trying to save the alcoholic, right? There are systems that need to be addressed. And shifting the focus to healing the mind, body, and the subconscious, restoring families and community should...
That's a good one.
Okay, I'm glad. All right, I got a thumbs up this time.
Yeah. Well, you've been getting my thumbs up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you want to say something?
I kind of have a question.
We're going to have questions at the end. Do you want to hold on for questions there? Okay, all right. I just don't want to run out of time, so I'm going to keep going. Our shift needs to focus on these interventions instead of focusing on overdose prevention and Narcan and going up to people and giving them needle exchange. Like, those are all important, but why aren't we focusing on all of this also? It's a big piece that's missed. So, really quick, in the community, what we see in the community.
Yeah, so, many people are disconnected in one way or another and find ways of coping and doing that and this, and, especially in today's day and age, like the time for self, time for family, can be lacking. There's a disconnection between these things, and even with community, with nature, and some kind of belief in something greater.
Yeah, whether it's like a cultural, ethnic belief or religious belief, spiritual belief, those things aren't really grounded in our culture at this point. So the cultural barriers. Parents are working long hours to survive. They're disconnected and fragmented within the family, causing children to turn to peers and social media as a source of guidance and support. And probably a lot of you have experienced that. And we end up having to grow up ourselves. I had to wake up for school, walk myself to school, dress, eat, all at like 11 years old. And what was that? It's a capitalistic workforce. So there's the cultural barrier that is preventing the family and cultural community interventions. There's also this piece where, do we have parent support groups? Is there education family trauma? Are there interventions as early as OBGYN offices? Therapy groups at school? Recreational activities for families? Affordable and accessible family healing retreats? Like, when do we ever have the time to really stop and pause and heal as a family? Has anyone, can you raise your hand if you've ever done that? No. That's not what our society promotes. So lastly, this is why we're doing this, to promote these things.
Yeah, so Realize Truth Inc. is a 501c3 nonprofit organization founded by local people to support diverse populations who are seeking connection, community support, and integrative healing. Our mission is to alleviate intergenerational trauma and restore collective healing. And this picture up here in the top left kind of speaks for itself. There's a real picture of one of our groups. Maybe some of the feet are in this room. And these are people coming together for one single purpose and like supporting each other and helping each other to like not feel alone. And we have a holistic approach. So we do like art therapy, sound healing, movement practices. We do walks in the woods. We just connect. We're like it mentioned before, people helping people. In the holistic approach, trauma is stored in the body and trapped in our subconscious. By integrating our minds and bodies, we can begin to heal at the root. And so some of these practices we do and some of these experiences help heal that mind-body connection. And it's like it's part of my journey, like in sobriety. Like I was introduced to this stuff and really got deeper into it when Rashad and I connected. And it's I've been from like the experiential way of educating myself, and through direct experience with this stuff, I can attest to it.
If anyone wants resources, because that could lead into a larger topic of trauma, intergenerational trauma, all these other things. If you want other resources, please reach out to us. We want people to be educated on this. We want there to be that shift in society, in our way of thinking. We can empower and heal ourselves, right? We don't have to rely on medication and other people to tell us what to do in the professional mental health system. When I'm working with people, I do not refer to myself as doctor. Like that, I'm another person. And we're going on this journey and helping in whatever way we can, right? So thank you for listening today, and reach out to us anytime.
Thank you, guys.
Did you want to ask your question?
Glad to.
You don't have to. Some people like it.
So it's not really technically a question. It's more like, so I believe everybody in their lives at some point tend to experience trauma in some way or another. Obviously there's a different extreme when it comes to trauma. Like some things could be basic, some could be to the point of it's just extreme
Severe.
levels.
Yeah.
But I mean, if we Google like the number one country that with the most like drug industry will be United States. So if you were to like compare statistics of drug use with United States and other countries, obviously it would be us more. Since obviously other people in other countries would also have certain traumas, but they wouldn't resort to substances because they're not exposed to drugs, because in this country we literally have marijuana legalized. So this a thing that they would resort to or lean on or rely on instead of like other things.
more easily accessible here than other countries. I think that's a great point. Yeah. And why? Why is it so accessible? That's a whole other topic. Yeah. Yeah.
Have you heard of the nucleus accumbens part of the brain? Nucleus accumbens. It's actually a part of the brain, right? If you draw a straight line here and there, it's like under, there's a small portion of the brain that actually registers all the like pleasurable sensations and all that. And what is that? So I attended Center for Addiction. That was, as she mentioned, like the muscle memory, the registers of trauma and releases of conscious and all that. There is actually a part of the brain, what's called nucleus accumbens, that which stores all of these. And that's why it's so hard to take that, get over that sensation. That's why the there's anything unfortunate. Because of that part of the brain of which it's a way to kind of just zoom, like delete all of that out. But apparently there is that part that stores this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's called nucleus accumbens, and what happens there.
Thanks for that. I appreciate it. Anybody have any questions or comments? How's the pizza? Good, okay. Yeah.
Just a few comments. Well, I appreciate the fact that you touched base on the family components, and I commend you on that. And I will throw out this question. Well, in order to become a computer scientist, you have to go to school. If you want to fix plumbing, you have to go to school. Fix cars, you go to school. But if you want to make babies and build a family, you don't have to go to school. Why is that? Why you don't include in the curriculum, one way or the other, to educate young folks how to become parents, or how to become spouses, and how to build a family. The other thing, when we talk about a lot of disease, we connect them with genes. I think the genes will cry because we're blaming too much on genes. Because for the gene to be expressed, you need a precursor.
Yes.
So if the precursor is not there, the gene will be happy and quiet.
Yes.
So it's the environment, it's what we put in our bodies when we expose ourselves. The other thing is, pain is not the enemy. Pain is part of being alive. If you are alive, you're going to feel uncomfortable.
Yes.
Maybe once you sleep and you go deep in sleep, then you don't feel pain. So we should not constantly seek to be comfortable and stop pain. Pain is just tell us we are still alive, right? And it depends. I'm not going to try to kill myself and think, oh, pain is nothing. No, just pain is not the enemy. We should find the ways of just dealing with it away from over-medicating ourselves. And the last point, what was it? Oh yeah, definitely connecting back with the family. I think we have to go back and revisit our values. We live in a world with no morality, no ethics. Top becomes bottom, left becomes right, right is wrong, and so on and so forth. We have to revisit our values. Thank you.
All really good
Great.
points. I hope everyone could hear him, right? And I really want to emphasize this idea. You're touching on epigenetics. So epigenetics is this idea that the environment expresses the genes that are already within us. So if the environment is healthy, it does not mean that the genes will be expressed, right? It doesn't mean we didn't necessarily have to experience addiction, but our environment at the time when we were teenagers was very poor, and the genes expressed, and so we went through what we did. But I think his point of like, well, it's my genes, like my genetics, it's just the way it is. I
if, and also like the benefit of finding that connection or purpose later, whichever it may be. And I was just wondering if the framework is that we're looking at the core of the issue not being continuous symptoms of addiction or the actual person who is going through addiction as a disease, but if the core of the issue is looking more at the intergenerational trauma, do you find when working with families that that creates a new set of connection and support within the family to really take everyone through that healing journey together? Is that sort of support built in a different way than you normally see because everyone is sort of in their own spaces, everyone is healing from that?
Yes, so I'll speak about like my private practice when I work with families, and maybe you can touch on what you've seen when we work in the community. When I have children come into my office, a lot of times parents just say like, for lack of better words, like, fix my child, right? Like, here, fix my child. And I say, no, you need to be in this process. Absolutely. Like, you're a part of this. We're healing the family dynamic here. Because that's the fracturedness. It's not the child that has the problem. And even if I work with a child and the parents don't want to, it makes it so much more difficult. Then there has to be this education around intergenerational trauma for the child and like how their parents did the best they could, but they just aren't able to right now, and they have to process all of those emotions. So to answer your question, when I'm working in my practice, the families, the siblings, they're a part of the process. I have them come in every session to do an update. Is there things that we need to work on? How is this dynamic going here? I'm thinking about the patterns through their family history that are coming up and repeating themselves so that we can change them. A lot of times they don't realize it. They need an outside observer. I can't see myself sometimes. You need someone else to say, hey, this is what's happening. I'm seeing this. Do you see this? And they're like, oh. Sometimes they're like, no. But those kind of conversations have to always happen. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so my experience, I'll just speak like really on, we have seen family members, whether it be like a mother, daughter, or a sister and two sisters, or a father and a son. We've seen this come in, these people come into a group where there's some single individual people and just happens to be some family members together, and like have witnessed like a lot of success and like healing in that, and like a repetitive thing where you can kind of watch that over like a 1, 2, or 3 week period. These things kind of reshape themselves. My own experience is, this addiction thing runs in my family very strongly, especially on my mom's side of the family. And my mother's taken part in some of this stuff, my cousins, my aunt, my brother, and it's created a platform for us to like get over like decades of like processing in like a matter of like 2 or 3 weeks. And it's not even done a lot of the time just with just the family. It's done amongst like other community members and like with the support of other people outside of that, and creates like a different space of vulnerability, but also support. And I've done extensive like work. Like it's taken like 8 years to like finally like really feel like I'm coming back to myself again. And this isn't something that happens overnight. So like it takes like a dedication, and when, especially for parents or whatever, like you have decades of decisions made over and over again, programmed in a certain way of thinking, and it's hard to like break that apart. But it's the experiences that I've had with my family in this process have been have just brought like a whole different experience for me, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the whole entire family heals, but like to be heard or to have a voice in this, the say of things and process some of this stuff has been very helpful. So.
Yeah, sometimes our family members will just show up to our healing circles, and we're like, okay, you know, we gotta process this stuff with you and everybody else. And it kind of gives a neutral space so that it's not as intense for them.
I just want to thank both of you for really opening up and letting us know about your experiences, because I think that is where healing would start with the community. I wish there would be more people like you, and thank you for your courage.
Thank you.
Thank you.